Welcome to Take Me to the Cloud, a place for business professionals to hear insights and best practices from industry experts that combine cloud systems, operations, supply chain, and finance.
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining Kim Gordon and I, Wally Merkas, this afternoon. And we look forward to talking today a little bit about M&A activity. And we're going to look at it from the buyer perspective. What we're going to focus on is a subset of IT due diligence. And that subset is really going to be focused on the systems part of an acquisition. And what we're looking at, specifically is what does the acquirer think about that target systems and how they can sort of assess them to mitigate the overall risk when the acquisition actually finalizes. We're going to spend some time today thinking about some of the questions that an acquirer might ask, and do those systems support that target for a year, not a year, longer than a year? Could that target expand and scale, staying on the same systems? Do they need to come over, et cetera? All those things we're going to talk a little bit about today. Does the target have proprietary software and solutions that need to be considered? Are there security risks? What is the potential target's cybersecurity risk? All of these different things are going to be factored into what we do. But essentially, if we think of it from a people, process, technology, and data, Kim, why don't you help us understand what an acquirer might think about as they go through this assessment?
Sure. So in a fit gap analysis, what we really want to do is understand the strategy for acquisitions first off. At the end goal is to create a plan, but this plan has to be complementary to the original goal. So the different options for strategy, I'm just going to list off some examples, is to do nothing. The target stays on the system essentially, even though the processes are going to be changing. They're each going to respectively have their own IT architecture. The second option could be that one company, it could be either the buyer or the target, is going to take over the other. So it could be either or. And then option 3 would be buy net new. So both are going to make, essentially the buyer would be making the change. So getting a new system, and both would be going through that transition process. So once you take a look at who's adopting which systems and who's going to be integrating into what, you really have to start asking other strategy questions like, is it just going to be a one and done deal? Are there going to be multiple acquisitions within the same time period that you have to consider? Because that does impact the timing, the planning. Is it just a carve out where you're just getting one department and then you have to negotiate those deals and also consider the transition strategy as well? So Wally, this is where I think we can use some of your expertise. What would be the result after going through each of the example options I produced?
Yeah, I think
gap analysis.
Yeah, thanks. I think if we look at the do nothing, sometimes it makes a lot of sense that the target company is thriving. The systems are functioning as expected, and there's a plan in place, a 1 year, 2 year, 5 year plan for that target to exist on its own systems. And you go in with that thought process, and you're not trying to acquire, and it becomes more of a reporting. What kind of reporting do we need to see come up to the new co or the new company that just acquired that other company? So there's a lot of conversation that we have around how we're going to get that reporting and what exactly is needed on the do nothing strategy. The do nothing one is the easiest one for us to talk about, probably the hardest one on the acquirer, as there's different processes, different IT, different governance, different around it. So there's a lot, it ends up being a lot of work on the acquirer side on that do nothing strategy. The one that's really interesting that we spend a lot of time on is an acquirer going in and saying, hey, I want to buy 1 versus 2 and 3. So I'm going to speak to all 3 of those here just in a second. So if the acquirer comes in and says, hey, we want to buy 1 target, and this is what we're doing, and we want to look at their systems, and we might either A, go on their systems, or B, they might come on our systems. Either way, a very similar strategy. We go through and try to understand, what exactly it is you're looking to do from the acquisition. A lot of times there's a target transaction. So we're going to buy a target we're going to do what we need to do. We're going to get 5 years, and then we're going to try and transact. So the end goal in that case is that we are trying to buy something, change the management, put in a new system, put in a new ERP, clean up the inventory, whatever that is. And then at 5 year mark or whatever mark, they're going to turn around and then sell it. All those things go into that sort of acquire of one, and it helps us to understand what to right size the new solution might be. So if the right size of that solution is, hey, the target is going to come over on the acquirers, what happens during the assessment is we look at the people, process, technology of the target, and we marry that up with the people, process, technology, and data of the acquirer. And then we come up with a fit gap analysis. Where is the risk? Where are we going to be exposed? So Kim, you and I do assessments all the time on this people, process, technology, and we spend a lot of time on data. Comment a little bit on data. What are some of the gaps in data that we're seeing? And just think of the couple of projects that we're working on right now. What are some of the challenges that you see trying to get data and getting data out of the target system in this case?
Sure. So the thing is with data that it can present problems from the very beginning in any transition project. So it's something you always have to keep a strict eye on. The data quality can be greatly impacted depending upon the data stewardship in a firm. So if there's poor data stewardship of the target firm, what you'll often see is that addresses are entered into number fields. So that there's a lack of field validation, right? So that's one piece of the puzzle. Another piece is that there's disparate systems and processes being used depending upon different preferences in different departments. So you have to source the same sets of data from different places, and that can affect the accuracy of the data as well. So that requires undergoing validation. Data is the most riskiest part of any project, I think. And then depending upon the quality of the data and how well it's kept, that can factor in greatly to the level of effort the whole acquisition is going to take, because it's going to impact every part of the transition.
Love that a lot. I really like it. So the reason we went down that pathway is because when it comes to data, so we have people, process, technology, and that data's got to come over. It's really important when we do the fit gap analysis on the target is that we understand how that data is going to come over. Even if, again, back to the do nothing strategy, that's a very important piece, because we're going to have to report on those in bits and pieces of information in the do nothing or acquire a single. What's interesting, and I'm going to bridge now to buying multiple. So if when we go in and learn the strategy is not to buy one target, but we have an interest in buying 10 targets, say, and we're looking at sort of an acquiring model. Now what happens is we're trying to then determine if a system A will manage it. Will each of these 10 manage themselves and single and roll up all individually? Do we need a system? They're going to buy a new system, implement the new system, and then go get all these acquisitions and integrate them fully into a single system. All those things factor now into that fit gap analysis. That's, again, a game changer. Now your data exercise just went to 10 companies instead of one. So the size of that project can be very, very quick. And most importantly here is to make sure that you have a system that will manage multiple types of companies, be flexible, et cetera. And we're seeing cloud technology really take over the space as it's quicker to deploy, quicker to gain access, can now with the controls coming full circle and really coming a long way from where they were in the beginning, really being able to lock down systems and put some really good IT general controls in place. We're seeing a big push in this marketplace with cloud technology. And Kim, over to you just quickly to finish off on thinking about buying net new and some of the things that we're thinking about as I look at our customers that we have right now that we're currently in flight with, and we're looking at a new system and they're moved to a new system. What are some of the things they might think about or they thought about as they went to that new system? Just quickly from a buyer perspective, maybe.
From a buyer perspective, when you're transitioning and when you need the target to transition into a new system, like Wally keeps mentioning, people, process, data, technology. So it's one thing to start installing the system, but you have to make sure your people are aligned. There's a bit of a change management process behind this whole thing as well. You're not only installing a new IT system, you're changing people's behaviors, what processes they're going to do. You're actually changing their whole structure of how they're used to operating, and maybe even the purpose of how they're operating too. So as you're going through this, you have to understand what are people's job roles today? How is that going to evolve once they're actually fully part of the buyer's operations now? And then that's part of the fit gap too, in a sense, where you have to understand how to take them from point A to point B. And that's part of the plan that needs to be baked in. How are you going to get your people to have buy-in into this? And how are you going to align the processes? The people play a primary part in forming the processes as well and adapting to the processes. So I would say that the change management piece is the biggest stickler in my mind.
I think you're right. And, as we start to think about closing out this segment, I think people are, as we go back through, and if I were to look at our other podcast sessions, people always seem to be the crux, and we can have an IT challenge, but and as people, if we all get together and move forward, we find those projects be more successful. So I think, what a great conversation, Kim, today. And thank you. As we start to think about, the investment it takes to mitigate the risk, and that's really what we talked about today. When we have an acquirer seeking out a target, and whatever strategy they're going, they're really trying to sort of seek to understand before they even do the acquisition, and the letter of intent is to get to that point where you're thinking, hey, where am I exposed and where am I at risk? And so thank you very much. Really appreciate everyone's time today and walking through this interesting approach to systems and M&A activity.
You've been listening to Take Me to the Cloud. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to be alerted of new episodes. For more information, visit withum.com.